care for nobody else. So I'm here to stand in the gap for you, because Satan got a trap set for you. But now we can make it together, we can take it together. You gotta take the time right to get your mind right. Yeah. Loving your whole being in a spiritual way. Get your soul down today. Loving your whole being in a spiritual way.
All right. Happy Thursday afternoon, everybody. We are here for another episode and another conversation of Soul Care today. And I am so honored today for our guest that's going to be on with us. You guys are going to hear from them in just a moment. This is amazing, y'all. This is absolutely incredible. We've been kicking this thing into high gear all year long, and it's been amazing. The journey has been absolutely incredible, inspiring, encouraging, uplifting, but most of all, it's been informative. It's been informative. I feel like I'm excited about our guest today, but I feel like I'm flying solo almost in terms of our hosting abilities. Our primary co-host, Dr. Barbara Peacock, is not able to be on with us tonight. She's actually recovering from being under the weather for a few days, but she sends her well wishes. We've talked via text over the last few days, and she's listening in behind the scenes. So we thank God that that she's on the mend and is going to come back flourishing even better than before. And then my other co-host, Dr. Shonda Carter, is traveling globally right now. She's traveling internationally right now. So she'll be listening in at some point as well. But we're thankful for each of them, their impact, their influence, and particularly Dr. Peacock and the work that God has called her to do. We need her to be healthy. We need her to get back on her feet and to be well rested. And so you all pray for her and pray that that she comes back flourishing and just better than she has been before. What is Soul Care Today? Soul Care Today is a monthly platform, a discussion on specific topics in particular that allows for individuals to live out of a healthy soul. To live out of a healthy soul. We use the term soul care because there's a whole body of work, so to speak. There's a whole industry. There's a whole frame of thought, framework around what soul care is. And it is the care of your soul. It is not some new age idea. It is not some new framework, new orthodoxy, or anything of that nature. It is literally taking the principles of Scripture and expanding your purview and your palette to understand how to engage not just with God, the creator, the sustainer of the heavens and the earth, but how to manage your soul in a healthy way. And Soul Care Today was birthed out of being able to offer a breath of fresh air for Christ followers, disciples of God, who've never been introduced to soul care or spiritual disciplines and really just need the tools for offering or for having a healthy soul. And then the wisdom for integrating soul care into your daily living. And so that's what we've been talking about. That's what we've been working through. And last month, y'all, we had a conversation last month that we decided we need a part two. And so even prior to Dr. Peacock and Dr. Carter not being able to physically be on, we established last month that we were going to have a part two of this discussion that we're continuing today, making soul care work for men. Making soul care work for men. Last month, we had Dr. Brown, Dr. Howard on, and man, he dropped so many grenades on us last month. It was absolutely amazing. And we got some heavy hitters tonight, and I'm gonna introduce them just very briefly. I'm not going to introduce them enough to make them uncomfortable, but I'm going to introduce them enough for y'all to know that they're not just some fly-by-night bootleg preachers. Not only that, but they're real men that are trying to live this thing out, and they're going to offer a wide range of perspective, insight, and wisdom on what we're dealing with tonight. First of all, let me start with you, Pastor Everett. Pastor Everett, it's so good to have you on tonight. Thank you so much for your schedule being made available to us tonight, and for you having the capacity and the interest to join in the discussion. Welcome, sir.
Well, Pastor Harris, thank you so much. It's a delight to be here. To Dr. Barbara Peacock and to Dr. Shonda Carter. Man, this is just pivotal timing that men can come in this space and begin to break down these walls and these barriers that keeps us from being who God wants us to be. But most of all, just to be in a space where men can be free, where men can find commonplace, and then seek an opportunity for us to grab further nuggets from each other to sharpen this iron. And so thank you for having us on this evening.
Yeah. So Pastor Everett is a pastor in the Charlotte metro area, actually in a big city called Wadesboro, North Carolina.
Wadesboro.
Yeah, and has been serving there for almost 20 years. Of course, he's licensed and ordained, a bachelor's degree from University of North Carolina in Charlotte. ITC affiliation, has graduated from ITC in Atlanta, and has also pursued some coursework in pastoral counseling. But also, you are a credentialed, certified spiritual director.
Yes, sir.
Credentialed and certified spiritual director.
Yes.
And so we'll talk about that in just a moment, what that means. And of course, you've served on a number of boards. You've been involved in some General Baptist associations and all that kind of good stuff. And so we're thankful that you're here, sir. Of course, we give honor to your bride, your wife, and appreciate her for giving you the latitude to be on with us tonight as well. So thank you. Pastor Cooper.
Yes.
We're so honored to have you.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you, Pastor. I got to tell you that by being connected to this podcast, it's really through the linkage to Dr. Barbara Peacock and her leadership. She goes to our church and here in Charlotte, and also the books that she's written and the spiritual direction classes and all the things that she has done to create space for this community, not just women, but men, is just incredible. I've sat in a cohort with other pastors and leaders with her in the last year and a half, and have gone through quite a bit of deep soul searching, if you will, as well as connectedness with God in the midst of other men and women, for that matter. And so I'm really delighted to be a part of this conversation tonight, and to be able to impart what my experience has been and what might be freeing. In fact, when Pastor had spoken about, freedom, I know Galatians 5:1, it says, it's for freedom that Christ set us free, and not to again be entangled into the yoke of bondage. And I tell you, a lot of men are bound. They're not living free. They're not experiencing the fullness of their life and in their relationship with Christ. And there's a variety of components to that. And perhaps we'll talk a little bit about that throughout the night.
Absolutely. And Pastor Cooper has the amazing privilege of serving as the CMO, the Chief Ministry Officer. It's a bigger title than an executive pastor. He's not an executive pastor. He's a CMO. He's a Chief Ministry Officer, helping to lead the day-to-day operations at the Park Church with Bishop Claude Alexander. And salute to Bishop Alexander. We honor him, his impact, his legacy, his work. We've had a chance to engage with Pastor Alexander on a number of occasions, and just an amazing, masterful, visionary leader. So we salute him in his absence tonight. And man, you worked with all kinds of incredible organizations, Global Leadership Summit, Willow Creek Association, Alarm, so many others. And you got some corporate background experience as well. So you're bringing to this conversation not just some ministry experience, but some corporate experience as well.
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, 25 years traveling U.S., Europe, and Africa, and then, of course, shifting into more life mission impact work for the last 12 years. And so, so I think that there's a hybrid component of what it's like to be a man in the trenches in the corporate world, and what it's like to live out your faith and connect with God while you're traveling in airplanes, trains, planes, automobiles, hotels, the list goes on for 20 years, and still staying focused on your faith and what that's like, and the challenges and the plight of the challenges of that. So, and then, of course, being on the other side, and that is deepening people's faith journey through a variety of connectedness on the faith side. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're married as well. And so salute to your bride for her commitment to serving alongside of you. I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to say what's up to my bride. Anything I'm doing that has public interfacing, at some point, she's going to watch it. She's going to engage with it. So salute to her as well. Let's jump into it, gentlemen. First of all, I think just by way of sort of leading into the conversation, in a very concise way, tell everybody, your basic faith story. How did you come to faith? How did you fall in love with Jesus? And then what did discipleship early on look like for you? And Pastor Everett, we'll start with you and then go from there.
My faith story starts with the fact that I was around or introduced to who God is, but didn't necessarily know him personally for myself. I came to know Christ my junior year in college. Literally began the journey then, and then enter into a ministry here in Charlotte, Greater Providence, under the tutelage of Dr. Fred Gibson.
Okay.
And truly that part of the journey, he said, what does discipleship look like? I was around men. I began to see what it was like for men to serve and to lead. And that just gave me a surge. That gave me an urge and a desire. And when I was invited to Saturday afternoons, I was a sports head. I mean, I stayed on the court and began to give up basketball for a Saturday evening, afternoon around the table in a classroom studying the Bible.
Wow.
And this passion for me was rooted in recognizing that this knowledge of knowing who God is for myself personally drove me to a hunger and a thirst to continue to want more, to desire more. And then that entered into serving, began to start co-teaching with someone. And from there, everything else began to propel.
I love it.
Preparation began to become essential, where I'm still bivocational right now, but I had to learn how to begin to put things in proper perspective, reordering some things that I knew were competing for my time and attention to what I know my soul needed and what I needed to be effective as I was growing.
Yeah, that term bivocational, we all know what that means, but just for the sake of those that may be listening that may not be aware, bivocational essentially means that he has a 9 to 5, if you would, although it may not just be 9 to 5, but he has a non-ministry vocational job that he pursues and then serves his church full time as well outside of that. So essentially he has 2 full-time jobs. Yes. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that. And I hadn't even thought about that until you just said it. But the vast majority of pastors in America are actually bivocational. The vast majority are not full-time in ministry, where that is their only vocation. And so even the conversation around soul care, the health of your soul for men, of course, we affirm women in ministry as well. But in this particular context of conversation, for men who are sometimes burning the candle at both ends, working 15, 16, 17-hour days, end on end, yes. And then having to manage the spiritual and emotional covering of people. And of course, anybody that's in the people business knows that serving people or leading people is not easy in any way, shape, or form. And, I'll just say this for the sake of this. Of course, he's not on here, but there's a pastor friend of mine, Bishop Nathaniel Gomillion, who pastors in Virginia. He has a huge heart for shepherding and leading pastors of small and mid-sized churches. And he said something to me, Pastor Cooper, Pastor Everett, a couple months ago that floored me. And I've been meditating on it ever since. He says that the American church has become so enthralled with the mega church that we've committed church apartheid to the small church.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
And it's floored me. It floored me because in many ways he's right. When you think about our conferences, when you think about the resources, when you think about our conversations, they very often veer towards the large or the mega church. And, I've been a part of mega churches on staff. I serve a large church now. But he's right in the sense that very often we overlook the small to mid-sized church. And they are actually the majority of the churches in America, right? The average church in America is less than 100 people. And yet most of our conversations never even go there. So we'll come back to that, Pastor Everett. But anything else you want to say before we shift over to Pastor Cooper?
No, that's wonderful how you've just brought us into the space, the difference between being bivocational and those who are called the full-time or the marketplace. I think it's important that people understand that. But I prayerfully believe that any call that we respond to that comes from God, it takes a unique person to be able to say yes to God and then be committed to it. I've spent years seeking to discover and be consistent and faithful to what he's called me to, despite the challenges.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Pastor Cooper, how'd you come to faith, sir? How'd you follow?
Yes. Well, good question. So I grew up in a non-Christian home in northern suburbs of Chicago. My parents had businesses, and they were flourishing. And my brother went to a private boys' school, and I was given an opportunity to go to the school. And I says, no, there aren't any girls there, so I want to go to another school. So I went to a co-ed school. And when I was there, I was introduced through being actually in trouble. I don't know how I got in trouble, but I got into detention hall and was sitting in there and heard one of the students talking to the teacher about Jesus. And so it piqued my interest, and I started to lean in on the conversation and just listen. And then I started to ask a couple of questions. And then from that conversation, I went ahead and bought my first Bible. And that was my junior year in high school. Now, it wasn't until my sophomore year in college, fast forward a couple of years, where I was, I believe, a product of prayer. So the school I went to was in Kansas. And there was a group of ladies that prayed every Tuesday morning, believing that God would revisit the campus like he had done back during the Azusa Street revival. Now, this was a Methodist campus. And in the newspapers, it talked about how the whole campus, the students, the mayor and everybody were raising their hands and speaking in other tongues and glorifying God during the season of time. So these ladies that would come together and pray asked that God would revisit the campus and see that happen again. So I was actually a part of what I would call a mini renewal on that campus. Now, what brought me to faith was that I was actually attending, the Bible fellowship on campus. I was still seeking God, but I didn't really have a connection with him until I realized, you know what? He's not Lord of all. He's just part of my life. And so I decided, it wasn't one of those earth-shaking kind of experiences, but I decided, if I'm going to really be all in on having a relationship with God, I need to really step up. And so it was February 22nd, 1984, that I stepped up and decided to give my life to Christ and have not turned back since. Now, in terms of the question of discipleship, I'm really humbled right now to be able to say this, because I know that this isn't the story of everybody's experience. But when I gave my life to the Lord, myself and about 7 other students that also had this renewal of their faith experience on campus, the pastor of the church in that town was a church plant from another church in the neighboring town. And he literally spent several days a week discipling us. And then, of course, we would go to church on Sunday. So I didn't know how good I had it. For the next 2.5 years, I was in this room, as well as off campus with these other students. We lived in a house. Men were up on the top and girls were on the bottom, separate entrances, separate kitchens, all of that. And we would have Bible study several times a week, and we would just get grounded. And I didn't know how good I had it. And so years later, I realized that a lot of people that give their life to Christ, it's like, they give their life to Christ, they may get some materials and we'll call or follow up, come back next week. So there's a whole new revamping of discipleship I think the church needs in terms of those that come to faith, because my experience was different than many others. So that was my journey. It was in college. And then my discipleship really took root immediately after that for the next couple of years. And then, of course, I launched into the business world from there.
What caused you to launch into the business world versus ministry if you were discipled so deeply?
Yeah, so my pastor went to a Bible college in Texas, and several of the students, once they graduated, went to that Bible college, and I wanted to. But keep in mind, my parents owned businesses, and I had this business DNA in me, and none of my family were believers, and I really felt like, okay. And plus, on top of that, 6 months before I even graduated, I had about 6 different offers to work for different corporations. And I made a decision to work for one of them. And so I didn't feel initially called into ministry, but I felt like I needed to be deepening in my faith journey by going to Bible college and getting more theological connection. And so I had a stint in the business world for a couple of years, and then I resigned and then went to college in Texas. And got my degree there, and then went on again. And, so I've hopped around since then in terms of getting a deeper relationship connection from an education. So it was initially a desire, but I knew that it was going to incubate for a bit. What I didn't know was that after being in the business world for a short season, then going to Bible college, I then went back and helped my dad's business grow. So I helped him expand his footprint in the U.S. And then I resigned from that. I wasn't too happy about it, but that's okay. It was what I felt God was really leading me to do. Then I went to Texas and worked for several global nonprofit ministry organizations in East Texas and down in San Antonio. And then from there, it was for a couple of years. I went back to Chicago and was in the business world for 22 years. And so I felt like I was incubating, but at the same point in time, God had a purpose and a plan. And so there was a lot of learnings and there was a lot of development from the corporate side as well as on my faith side. So that's kind of my journey, if you will. And now I'm back in the ministry, 12 years now, working for global nonprofits and being on staff. Mm-hmm.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So when you all think about all of the places that you've been and the folks that you've served and been a part of and folks that you've encountered, environments that you've encountered, what have you noticed that was either a part of your faith journey or not a part of your faith journey that the church really needs to lean in on in this season? Either one of you that want to jump in.
In the context of men or in the church in general?
No, well, if you want to answer both, that's fine too.
Yeah. So since we're focused on soul care, I think that soul care is kind of like prayer. People talk about it, but they don't do it, right?
Wow.
It's one of those scenarios where, let's pray, but do we really pray? I mean, if I say I'm going to pray for somebody, I'm going to pray for somebody. If I'm going to take time aside and spend time with God, I'm going to take time aside and spend with God. So what I've discerned, and about 20 years ago, a lady by the name of Mindy Calaguar, who attended Willow Creek, and she now has a ministry called Soul Care. And you can actually go to soulcare.com and you'll get all of her content and all that. She's in Colorado. She used to have these practices at our church. And it was contemplative, and it was intertwining and developing people into a sense of communing with God in a space that was inviting and less distractive. And so there was, of course, contemplative worship. Well, at the same point in time, we experienced different practices like Lectio Divina and Visio Divina, and then silence. And in those moments, I realized that was a missing part of my faith journey. And so fast forward now to where we're at now, and even hearing the conversation from last month's podcast, when it comes to men, I think that there is a sense of lack of vulnerability or lack of exposure, lack of wanting to lean in and opening up, because that doesn't sound masculine. Men are strong and need to be guarded and need to be fortified. And the reality is Jesus spent his ministry time with 12 men, and they were different kinds of men, but he also taught them how to step aside. They may have not known how to step aside and how to rest and how to relax and how to restore, but he modeled that. And today, I think that there's an opportunity for men and women to learn what does it mean to step aside and to take rest and to take Sabbath. And I'll tell you, I'm the first person to say that I can do a better job of that. And then the other element is, as it relates to soul care, is it's really demystifying it and really breaking down what does that really mean. And perhaps we can talk a little bit more about that.
I love that. Pastor Everett?
Well, I'm going to take a deep dive into what I believe the church is attempting to do, but to Pastor Cooper's point about knowing about and not practicing, I think we've got to be more intentional to ensure that we're building community and not memberships.
Ooh, so good.
This is where it challenges me as a pastor, as a man of faith. Soul care is, we know that the entities of family, church, workplace, we just move into those things that we are supposed to do. But how many people within a ministry understand the intentional effort that's being going forth through all of us that need to build community? And so I say that because also with that means we have to learn how to navigate people's personalities and the problems that come within that community. I believe we do make a good effort and a challenge to deal with those things, whether it's the teaching and the preaching. But what I'm learning is, my wife and I talk about this all the time. There are some people who know how to stay just enough on the surface to be a part of, but don't allow themselves to become inclusive.
Wow.
And so I think my heart's desire, my passion is to be intentional, to break down those barriers that keeps us from coming to the table with the hard conversations. And so when it comes to soul care, when it comes to men and soul care, we struggle, I believe sometimes, Pastor Chris, Pastor Christopher, we struggle trying to find who we are. We know that we are attached to our job, our titles, but now that you have to put me on pause and ask me some hard questions to identify with who I am and who I need to become, that's the part that excites me.
Wow.
To take time, to spend time with core groups of people, talking and having conversations in a safe space, creating a safe space for men to know how to heal in their community. So that it be more impactful, more on guard about what it means to hold that family together, to hold that church community together, to go into the workplace and still be effective.
So good. So good.
You know, one of the things I'll say, you know, as a leader in a church, but also realizing that we have maybe some workplace people on the call here, you know, what I often do in a conversation, and I did this with every single one of my staff when I came on board 4 years ago, when I had my one-on-ones with them. One of the leading questions I had for them is, how is your soul? How are you caring for your soul? And to some, they understood what I meant, and to others, it was kind of a new concept. And so I kind of needed to break it down a little bit. But I believe that the caring of our soul is so pivotal and transformative in our walk and our faith journey that it needs to be essential. You know, as Pastor Gregory said, you know, it's not about building communities, but, you know, relationships. You know, we need to begin to relate with one another authentically, with appropriate vulnerability, not so that when the content comes out, it gets weaponized back against you, but to be able to own the reality of where I'm at, okay, in my walk and where I'm at in my faith. And some of that time of spending with God strips off the layers of the things that keep us from living deeper, richer, more authentic lives. And so the more time I spend with Jesus, the more of the less of me, you know, the whole intimacy, it's into me you see. So I want him to see more in me, but I want to see more in him so that I can be a mere reflection of him. And that takes root right at the soul level. So I'm body, mind, spirit, but my soul. And I often think about this. You know, what am I going to do when I pass on and go to heaven? I'm going to be worshiping God. I'm going to be before his throne. I'm going to be with the angels glorifying him. I'm going to be fellowshipping with the other saints that have gone before me. But at the same point in time, my soul is going to be fully enriched because I'm connected with God. And while I'm here, what can I do to practice and be in tune with God? And that has a lot to do with my soul care and about how I spend my time with him, what that looks like.
You know, it's interesting, pastors. I was on a call today. It was a Zoom call. It was a Google Meet, but it was about 40 or maybe even 50 pastors from across the United States on. And one of the facilitators of the call said, and he's, if I said his name, many people listening to this may know of his platform and his work. He went through a season a number of years back where there were some public challenges at his church that he weathered. And he's still at his church, fortunately, he's able to get his legs back underneath him and recover. But he said something today that, you know, I think speaks to a lot of what you both just said. He said, the church preaches grace, but we really don't practice it. Mm-hmm. And Pastor Cooper, when you just said appropriate vulnerability, I think that's such a powerful statement because, and I want to get into why do we think, you know, men struggle with soul care, community vulnerability, appropriate vulnerability, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that may be one of the reasons, right? I'd love to hear from you all on some of the others, but I think men are afraid, I won't say be transparent, but to be translucent where what they share, their humanity, will be weaponized against them later, or they're nervous that what they may share, the other person won't know what to do with what they share. Right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that as brothers, as men. Pastor Cooper, you opened up that box, so I'm gonna let you jump in first, and then Pastor Everett, I'm gonna let you come and do the cleanup.
Yeah. So we can go deep here for a moment and get real. You know, I think that it's true that we live in a broken, fallen world that's scarred, traumatized, has all sorts of pain in it. And oftentimes that pain starts early in life.
Yeah.
You know, when we're born, we've got a 360-degree personality. You know, you think about a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, you know, they're going to laugh out loud at anything, you know, or they're going to, when they cry, they're going to cry, or when they're mad, they're going to be mad. They express their emotions in such a way that is so true and pure and raw. Yeah. But what happens is that all of a sudden a parent, mother or father, even an uncle, maybe even a grandparent, you know, when that little child is going to, you know, act up and laugh or giggle, shh, no, it's not the time to laugh. Or, oh no, you boys don't cry. They suppress those emotions and keep them from being able to exhibit them, because if they do, they're going to feel like that's a bad thing to do. So I'm not going to cry, or I'm not going to even speak up, because if I do, I'm going to get shh, because they don't know. They're just being free in themselves. Now, yes, those little kids could be steered healthily and encouraged and inspired to be able to express those emotions, but oftentimes they get suppressed. And then all of a sudden, over time, they begin this pattern of not being able to authentically live in who they are. So they then begin to wear masks and be different people around different people, because they cloister that what they can't do.
Wow.
And so as a result of that, you know, you get into a church scenario and you see some people that are, you know, worshiping God, you know, authentically or whatever it might be. And they're like, I don't know that I can do that. You know, I don't, because I've been told I can't do certain things. And so there's experiential things that have kept people from being able to emerge out of that. And the grace and the love of Jesus is to say, you know what? I see you just as you are. I love you and I accept you just as you are. Even though your parents may have, or your uncle, or that neighbor down the road, or whatever, may have suppressed or have chided you. And you then begin to walk a different way, or you no longer have that humor bone in you, or you no longer, you know, want to speak out because you're afraid that it may not be accepted. So those patterns start out earlier on. And so I think that people sometimes get caught into, how can I really fully express myself? And will I be accepted? And you know what? The church ought to be the place that accepts people just as they are. You don't have to wear your, you know, dress to the nines when you come in on Sunday. You don't have to pray a certain way, or you don't have to feel like you have to pray a certain way. You know, just be yourself and allow the work of the Holy Spirit that transforms us into his image, develop us into whom he desires us to be, because we're all unique. We all have different DNA. We all have different fingerprints. We all have different, you know, capabilities, giftings, talents, and enablements. And oftentimes people don't feel comfortable. And so we as a church ought to help open those doors even wider and accept people just as they are, and allow them to walk in the freedom that Christ has for them. Now, yes, there is biblical structure. There is morality. There's things that are scripturally inherent that we should follow as believers. So I think it starts early on, and that we suppress people's emotions that keep them from being able to exhibit them today in a way that keeps them being real and keeping it real, you know. So
conditioning and habits to hiding.
Wow.
Pastor Everett, talk to us, man. What you got?
Gosh, between what you just said, and you mentioned that the church practiced grace, or should be practicing grace, I'm going to go at it in this perspective.
Yeah.
When we understand the power of shame and guilt, you mentioned this church not practicing grace. That's exactly what we need when there's a failure.
Yeah.
And I think of men who as we said, if we're suppressing our emotions, or we don't know how to channel that energy or deal with the fact that something fell apart, and how do you regroup? We don't have an automatic for how to do that.
Yeah.
So I pinned this response to what you said earlier about, is the church practicing grace? I believe we try to make a good intentional effort to do so. But what I believe it takes is, it's going to take time to allow that person to understand when he has been wounded, or when he has self-inflicted wounds. What does it require for us, Pastor Harris, to be able to embrace that and to see God's glory and hand on a recovered, restored man of faith, because we took time to do that? And I think what I'm learning is the healing piece for me, when men can understand what grief can do to us and what shame can do to us, and how it diverts our pathway. And you said something about hiding. I don't believe we want to hide, but because the culture teaches us that when we've done a wrong, we don't know how to recover from it.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying we don't have practices and people who are teaching us, but the how-to for me is, a person needs to know when a spiritual director is walking alongside him, to allow him to be who he is with all the stuff he has spilled out, and to allow him to find that pathway back to God, so that he understands the grace of it.
So good. So there's two things right now that are top of mind for me, based on what you all have already said, and what I feel like, or sense the conversation is headed towards, that I want to speak to. I'm gonna go ahead and lay the two of them out now, because I'm looking at our time, man, and time is not our friend right now. One thing I'm thinking about is the men who may be listening to this, and maybe they missed last month's conversation. And Pastor Cooper, you referenced a part of your spiritual journey. You were exposed to things like Lectio Divina. You were exposed to things like silence and Sabbath. Pastor Everett, you are a spiritual director, and you're teaching people to slow down. And so there is this stigma, or there could be this perception, that soul care is weak, or feminized in some way. We talked about this last month, where I shared a little bit of my journey of, growing up. Many of the people that I saw practicing what I now know are spiritual disciplines, I didn't see the men doing it. I mean, I saw men present in church, but I didn't see them practicing the spiritual disciplines or even leading that. So what would you say to those men that are still trying to wrap their mind around the value, the strength, the manliness of these disciplines and practices? But then the second question I got noodling in my head that I want us to deal with is, if there are pastors listening to this, and they're shepherding and leading men in their church, what would you say to them are the next steps? I mean, this is a seed that's been planted maybe for them, of something to consider. What should they do next? What should they do differently? What should they be thinking about in their church? Pastor Everett, I'm gonna have you jump in on the first question first. We'll get to the pastoring question second, but jump in on that first question first, of men who are still trying to wrap their minds around the manliness of soul care.
Well, I think that's a lot of the things that drives our culture to divide us into those things that help us as men to become who we need to be. First, we need to get beyond the stigmas. We need to break down and teach that. You've said it in the last session, and I'll say it and repeat it tonight. Men need something in their tool belt. They need things in their toolkit to allow them to discover the inward part of who they are. Men do a lot of outward looking. Men do a lot of leading and looking outward. But in order to be effective on the soul care journey, he has to look inward.
Yeah.
And so when you start looking inward, that will help break down those walls that we've created, or perhaps maybe the culture is driving this, don't be this or don't be that, when it comes to the hardness, or this is too feminine. The point of the reference is, I think it creates a space for him to know who he is from the inside out. That God will then allow him on the front lines to lead with compassion, to lead with empathy, to lead in a way that the holistic approach to what I'm hearing and believing and trusting my experience alone teaches me that I was literally blocking what I needed because of what I picked up along the way about what was feminine and what men should be doing when it comes to our hardness. And then I want to do this last plug in that if any men choose this pathway, all those practices that you just mentioned, I can tell you, I knew what it was like for a season to literally just prepare the sermon.
Wow.
I knew what it was like to prepare the message every week, but then pushing the prayer life aside. And so you just mentioned what it requires for us to stay connected to the relationship in God. And I think those principles and those disciplines are necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. Pastor Cooper?
Yeah, it's a lot in the question and a lot in the response. But I will say this, that I agree with Pastor Gregory. You know, there's a variety of things that I think it would be important for the men that are on this call or the pastors in terms of spiritual practices, and how do you really look at the value, strength, and the you said value, strength, and the third thing was
the manliness of spiritual discipline.
Yeah, the manliness. Yeah. So, you know, I think that it's like you don't know what it's like until you try it, right? It's kind of like that ice cream flavor. You know, there's 31 flavors. You know, you don't know about that one unique flavor. You're like, it looks kind of funny and it's swirly and whatnot. But when you try, you're like, wow, that's not too bad. You know, I might get that the next time I come in. So when it comes to spiritual practice and getting into an environment that introduces you to these processes, practices, if you will, you've got to try it. You've got to lean into it. And I think it takes 10 to 15 minutes in a space before you can get grounded. Because many times when you get into a meeting, you go to a meeting and something that's new for the first time, you know, there's lots of distractions. Maybe you ate a big meal beforehand, or you're like, I don't know what this is about, but I'm going because my wife told me I should go, or, you know, hey, this is a new thing. I'm just going to check it out. And I don't know if it's for me, but I got to tell you that if you go in with intentionality to say, you know, I wonder what might be there for me, you'll be surprised what God's going to do in that moment. So I'll give you an example. We had at our church a Soul Care Saturday, and Dr. Peacock actually participated in this with us. And we had, you know, I was surprised. We had about 45 people or so. I know we got a big church, but I mean, when we put that out there, we didn't know how many people were going to show up. We didn't actually put a RSVP, or we didn't do a registration, but people showed up, and many of them, I would say more than half of them, were curious because they didn't know or understand what soul care was. So we put it out there, but they took the courage step to come. And so through that experience of going through some of the spiritual disciplines and breaking down scripture around spending time with God and listening to his word, listening to it multiple times with your eyes closed, and taking that in and allowing words to pop up. These practical little steps created value. Mm-hmm. Now, what was the strength around that was that we were introduced, or the people that were there were introduced to something that was unfamiliar to them. But because it was unfamiliar to them and they leaned in, they received strength from that value of what the representation of soul care was through the illustrations and the exercises and the things that we did. And so when it comes to the manliness part of it, if you're thinking about men going into that environment, because you think, oh, that's kind of effeminate. No, it's not. This is a God thing. You know, there's nothing about this that is about women. This is about God and you having a relationship with him as an individual, man, woman, or child. This is about connectedness and his desire and delight to spend time and to connect with us. So what was interesting is that afterwards, you know, it was a full morning session, Soul Care Saturday. I inquired about this with some of the men that were there. And, you know, the response was, I didn't know what I was stepping into, but you know what? I really liked this. This was really good. I really felt fed. This was something special for me. It was something for me. It wasn't something that I thought was, you know, what I thought I was going to get, but I got more than what I thought I was going to get. And so I'm glad I came, because I would have had FOMO if I didn't, you know, because I didn't want to miss out, and I can't wait to the next time. And quite frankly, just by talking about it, we need to get it back on our schedule. So in terms of next steps for pastors, I would be more than happy to share what the agenda of that was, but I think you need a soul care or spiritual director or somebody to facilitate that time of introduction and orientation and experience, because it's really special. And the value that comes out of it is something special. And it's not an effeminate thing. It's not a masculine thing. It's a God thing. It's something that roots us in our characteristics of our faith in Christ at its core. And so, it was great. So I would suggest considering a soul care Saturday and teeing that up as an introduction, because it is something I believe is missing in the church. It's not something that's void from the church, but it is not as prominent. We think about worship, ministry of the word, praise, maybe even prayer a little bit, or discipleship. But soul care, golly, when you tap into that stream of value, it fortifies us individually, but then collectively as a group. So I can't understate this. And no, I didn't get a gift card for saying this. This is something that's integrated into my life, and it's something that I think has provided ongoing sustainable value.
Yeah, I'm going to ask both of you all before we get off today, what does your personal soul care look like? But Pastor Everett, Pastor Cooper sort of answered the second question as a lead-in of some things that pastors need to be thinking about in this regard. What would you say if a pastor is listening to this? And as you answer, I want to practice what we preach. So I want you to specifically, in your answer, at some point, talk to the pastor who's listening, and they themselves are already overwhelmed. They're bivocational. They don't have a big team. They don't have a Pastor Cooper that they can cast vision to, and then Pastor Cooper goes and implements. They are the jack of all trades for their church, right? They're the ones having to turn the lights on, clean the building, clean the parking lot, meet the vendors, all the things. So what would you say to that pastor that's navigating this?
I'll start out with two biblical characters, and there are more. Pastor Moses. So if we want to relate and speak,
he's a mega church pastor, Pastor Everett. You got to be careful.
So let's talk about Pastor Moses, and then we can go to anointed prophet Elijah, Pastor Elijah. If there's anything that any pastors are receiving from these podcasts, first I want to encourage you. You've got to be equipped and start equipping your congregation and prepare them for soul care. Wow. I highly effectively encourage that. If there's anything that we can say as pastors that we experienced on the journey, we all have had those pockets and those places where ministry got hard. It was tough. And I believe sometimes where pastors begin to curl and they feel that they don't have anyone on that mountain, have anyone else to go through that, as you said, talked about this, Pastor Chris, how we close up. But yet I look at how he treated Elijah. Great victory, and then he goes and curl, willing to being ready to die. So I'm saying to the pastors who've been tenured in the journey and feel that pull, this is a time of bringing the church to a place of soul care. The entire church needs to be exposed to soul care because people are hurting. People are wounded. And if there's any hunger or thirst in any pastors today, we have to be intentional first to lead it out.
Wow. Because
of the stigma and because of what we just talked about, some are more reluctant not to do it because they don't understand what it looks like. But if it's going to be done by faith and we trust God with the people that he called us to lead, I guarantee you there's going to be a richness inside that community of people that will be raised up to carry forth the baton for the next generations to come.
Wow. That's so good.
Soul care is essential. And I'll give this little bit of a caveat to plug. Because I've gone through the journey and now serving with Peacock Soul Care on the Dream Team, I see it every time we come together. And this is the place where you at. There are times that we were coming to do business within PSC, and we broke away to just begin to practice among ourselves to just heal, to listen, to embrace each other before we go into the meeting agenda.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Let me just do a quick plug, Pastor
Yeah.
Cooper, really fast. If you're listening to this tonight and you are interested in learning more and you're looking for a male spiritual director, Pastor Everett is on that team. You can connect with them at peacocksoulcare.com. The link is right there on the screen. Check them out. Check out all that Dr. Peacock has put together. Links to her books and resources are there. There's more content, more books coming out. I think she has sent to the publisher the book about the spiritual autobiography. That's going to be a big deal when that gets published. So check out the resources at Peacock Soul Care, and I think your soul will appreciate it once you take that next step. Go ahead, Pastor Cooper.
Yeah, if I can add another practical note. Again, I'm about practicality. I'm trying to break it down. So if there's pastors, leaders, or even individuals that are interested in diving a little bit more into what is soul care and what are some of the practical things I can do to get orientated or introduced to it, there's lots of books out there. And I love Dr. Peacock. She knows that. And she wrote this book, African American Practice, soul care in an African American practice. And again, I'm not trying to plug it, but I actually, you know what? Take that back. I'll be real. I am plugging it.
Trying to plug it.
So I'm just going to read. There's two parts to it: spiritual direction and spiritual disciplines, and then prayer disciplines. And I'm just going to suggest this because it's just coming to me. And that is, there's 10 chapters here. Take 10 weeks. Read one chapter a week. Marinate in that chapter during the week, then go on to the next chapter. And in the spiritual directions and spiritual disciplines, it's the first chapter is spiritual direction and lectio divina. So you get a chance to learn a little bit about what that is. Second chapter, spiritual direction and prayer. Third is meditation and contemplation. 4 is spiritual direction and soul care. 5 is detachment and attachment and spiritual direction. And then when you get into the prayer disciplines, think about the second phase. You go around in second base, going home. 6th chapter is prayer and generational spiritual foundation. 7 is prayer and spiritual direction. 8 is prayer and civil rights. 9 is prayer and rest. And then 10 is prayer and suffering. So this could allow you to kind of wade into the waters and get familiar and allow that to marinate within yourself. And then who knows, maybe you pioneer a Bible study with a group of people to then unpack each of these chapters over 10 weeks. So you got 20 weeks of content here, 10 for yourself, and then 10 to disciple the others. And then who knows what can flourish from within your congregation.
I love that. I love that. So some very specific takeaways, and I want to give you those that are listening in this quote here that I think serves as an incredible handle for you to kind of put your arms around what Pastor Everett and Pastor Cooper have shared tonight. Dallas Willard said this. He says, if your soul is healthy, no external circumstance can destroy your life. If your soul is unhealthy, no external circumstance can redeem your life. Man, that's so good.
Wow.
That's so good. That's so good.
That's worth saying again.
Yeah. I'll say it again. If your soul is healthy, no external circumstance can destroy your life. If your soul is unhealthy, no external circumstance can redeem your life. And the goal tonight is for us to have had this discussion, this conversation with men. Number one, to help you know that soul care is strength, not weakness.
That's right.
Your life, your relationship with God, your relationship with your spouses or your children or your community or your church or wherever, all gets better when you get better. And we all know that self-leadership is the hardest leadership there is. And so this is about leading yourself and leading yourself well as we are called to help lead and influence others well, right? We have talked about this tonight a little bit, that these self-care, not self-care, but soul care practices can be adjusted to fit a man's lifestyle in a way that removes shame or guilt. And there may be some conviction, right? And we acknowledge on this platform tonight, conviction sometimes is good. It is actually inspired by Holy Spirit. So we want to sometimes lean into conviction. Conviction is very different than condemnation, right? Condemnation says, you made a mistake and you are your mistake. But conviction says you made a mistake, but God can help you recover from your mistake. And so that's the difference. And so then we finally kind of close out this discussion by acknowledging that God wants and desires all of us, especially as men, to have a healthy soul. So I want to close out our discussion, sort of start landing the plane here by asking Pastor Cooper, what does soul care personally look like for you? What have you found that works for you? Quite frankly, if you're comfortable sharing, what have you found doesn't work for you?
Sure. Well, I live, unfortunately, or fortunately, however way you want to look at it, a very busy life. And I actually texted someone today that I've been living more like Martha than Mary. And I need to really look at revisiting that and how I can sit at Jesus's feet more. So what it looks like to me is, I like getting out into the wilderness, whether it be at a lake or on a walk, where I'm in a space where it's not distracting. We live in a very cluttered, distracted, noisy world. I mean, you walk outside, you hear buses and cars and whatever. And so I find myself benefiting from being in contemplative spaces where I can be quiet, where I can be still, where I can do more intra reflection, and where I can feel the it's not spiritual, but I mean, feel the breeze, feel the wind. It's like faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, but evidence of things yet seen. Some people say, well, how do you know what faith is? Well, faith is, do you believe in wind? Yeah, I believe in wind. I can't see it, but I can feel it. And so when I'm in a spot where I can be less distracted or have limited to no distraction, I'm able to lean in and sense the presence of God, and he speaks to me. Now, he speaks to me in pictures, but he speaks to me, and I'm able to lean in. And I had a moment this morning with him, and it was special, and I'm never going to forget it. But I will say that that it was what I needed, and he knows what we need when we come to him. And whether we come to him, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest, in the moment or in a getaway or a retreat, he will visit you there. It's like I say, he's just as close as a whisper away, and he is. So what it looks like to me is I have to be intentional. I have to block out the time, and I have to also go with expectation, but freedom of recognizing that it's mostly out of obedience and not out of requiring that God is going to meet me there, because he is God. And whether he meets me there or not, it's a place I need to know. I know I need to go. Mm-hmm. And when he does meet me, it is special. So that's practical. We didn't get into all the little different practical, like Lectio Divina, Visio Divina, silence and solitude, and prayer walks and all the different things that lead into some practices. But that's some of what my experience is, as I can unveil that to you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really fast before Pastor Everett comes, Pastor Cooper, are there any disciplines that you've practiced at points that you found that just doesn't work for you?
Yeah, I always say this, and it's true. You can't manufacture the Holy Spirit. You can't manufacture, saying, God, I'm here, so show up, So what doesn't work is when I'm not coming with a contrite heart, but I'm coming in a selfish way. And that's probably more of a cry out, more so than a coming before his presence with humility. And so I think that having the right heart going into that moment of time with God is important. And sometimes my heart probably isn't right. And so that doesn't work for me, or it doesn't work in the outcome of it. So I think that it's like It's like, think of a surgeon. He's got to prepare for surgery. He's got to, he's got to clean himself. He's got to do these. And I'm not saying that you can't just jump into the presence of God, but you ought to have a mindful heart when you take a step into these moments, because they are precious, they are special, and God will meet you there. So I think that maybe not going in with the right heart or the right attitude or the right expectation sometimes can trip it up. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Pastor Everett.
Wow, Pastor Cooper, man, thank you for being transparent and sharing that. My practice, Pastor Harris, has been one of Dale Calhoun has a great book. Dr. Peacock's book is even great, but all the INGs of practicing the spiritual disciplines. For me, it's just been the time to set aside to do it. And I'll share it from this perspective, being authentic. When I discovered I was in a pit and really needed a way out, I found that I needed someone to help guide that, and it was Dr. Barbara L. Peacock. I had a low place in ministry, and the first thing she asked me to consider doing after we met a couple of times was to write the spiritual autobiography.
Wow.
Immediately once I wrote that spiritual autobiography, it was an eye-opener for anyone that's listening, or pastors, or as a single person seeking out what this looks like. And so these disciplines to be able to write out the story of your life, a discipline of journaling. So these disciplines to write. Some people say, well, I started writing and I stopped. I say, well, that's okay. It's okay to start and stop. I just don't want it to become your God.
Wow.
Let the relationship develop. And that's what I am seeing more so as I practice the sitting and being still, coming with no agenda. So as a pastor, we plan for hours for the sermon. And I found solace. I found peace to just be present before God and not even pick up the pen or paper.
Wow.
Not even consider the computer. And I can tell you how freeing that was to begin to practice that. When you know something and you say, I should be preparing. Well, what is that like to release all of that to God so that you know without a doubt that the soul is going to be richly nourished because the spirit now is being leading. The spirit is leading. And so the Lectio Divina, the Visio Divina, let me tell you, through college, I painted and did art, did all the art history. When I hit the Visio Divina, man, it turned me up to another notch. To realize that you change the way you see things, your visual, the surrounding of the great things that God has created. And so then to sit and to begin to think in a way that God draws your mind to something that you typically wouldn't pay attention to.
Yeah.
So what I'm beginning to understand is as you learn to pay attention to God, as you learn to discern what he's doing, it takes time. But anyone that's listening, I think because we stay in a fast-paced culture, something is telling us you don't have time.
Wow.
But the 5 minutes can move to 10. The 10 minutes can move to 30. And then you find yourself in a rhythm.
I love it. I love it.
So that's what it looks like for me. I will also say my wife, I have an incredible wife who supports me, Pastor Harris, supports me, Pastor Cooper. And for those of you on the call that may be listening, you know what it's like that for me, when you have work and then you get a break and here comes the honeydew. And my wife has been intentional not to give me a honeydew when I was out of work for spring break or those weeks that I was out. And she respectfully did that. And then allowed me to decide I'm going to go away for 3 days.
Wow.
In the rural church, pastors do not have a sabbatical.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I can tell you the beauty of being able to now understand what it means to be still. And
I would be remiss if I didn't mention. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. So this month will be 30 years for my wife and I. So we've been married for 30 years, and so I'm just really delighted to be able to say that I love her, and she's special, and it's been great. It's been great. So. You were talking about your wife, so I had to throw that in there. Otherwise, I can get in trouble if I don't talk about it, right?
I was scared to say something else about sabbaticals, and he's talking about his wife. I love it. I love it.
What I'm saying is that when we talk relationship, when you talk healing, when you want to see a man of faith become outside of all the stereotypes, outside of all those manly things that we think we have to uphold. The embracing for me was when I realized my wife is praying for me just as much as anyone. I mean, I can see stickers on a painted canvas that she has my name on.
I love it. I love it.
It positions you and it postures you to realize that power of praying. You talked about these disciplines. And so the effectiveness allows you to grow beyond what those stipulations are. What if I didn't do this feminine thing? No, I'm beyond that. And my soul is free.
Yeah.
I'm beyond that. So what I'll take away, the takeaway from me is when you finally understand how much navigating we're doing in our leadership models or navigating the mountains, I'm praying that it brings us to healthy relationships and safe spaces.
Yeah.
That's my prayer is, yes, we're navigating through leadership models that we see. And a lot of them, they all include processes. But what if you have all the processes, but do not have the success of God?
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
You know, I wonder if the whole.
Sorry. Go ahead, Pastor Cooper. I'll give you final comments here because we're going to close out our discussion.
No, I'll refrain. That's fine. I didn't want to stir up another conversation point, but that's good. Yes.
No, no. I want you to. You already started, so I want you to make that point.
Yeah, no problem. And by the way, the screen froze, so I apologize for jumping in the midst of that conversation. The statement you're making, your pastor effort. Yeah, you know, I would have to concur. You know, the soul is genderless. It's not about a woman, and it's not about a man. You know, women, yes, we see more women in church than men, but and there's lots of, no, I don't want to say there's lots, there's probably some reasons for that, but the reality is this is about the presence and the power and the person of God and the Holy Spirit that draws us to him. And when men see that, it's not that women see it before men, they can experience that just as much. It's not, they get more than we do, and so I can't step into this. It's not about that. It's about your direct connection with God. And so there's no competition here. There should be no competition or comparison. He's incomparable, you know? And so I just encourage people to tap into that and to experience that for themselves. And you will say, wow, it's not what I've missed. It's what I'm looking forward to going forward.
Yeah, I love it. This has been an absolutely amazing discussion tonight, y'all. And for those that are listening in, this is Soul Care Today, our once a month discussion rooted in the work of Dr. Barbara Peacock and the Peacock Soul Care Institute. Here's the link for the Peacock Soul Care Institute. Not only do they have spiritual directors that are present on that platform that you can connect with and schedule with, but Dr. Peacock herself has some resources. There's some other resources that are recommended on the platform that you can connect with and be a part of. And I want to invite you all, as Pastor Cooper shared, just try it. just try it. It's you know, Pastor Cooper, he talked about ice cream and the 31 flavors. I'll put it this way. It's that soul food meal that you didn't know you needed, right? It's hitting on all the flavors in the palate of your mouth that is seasoned to perfection, and that meat is tender, and those vegetables are fresh, and it's got all the sweet and the salty and all the things that go along with it. And our souls are constantly craving that. I say this, to move at the speed of the Spirit. And very often we are moving faster than our spirit can keep up with. And God really wants us to have a rhythm that honors him. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons and daughters of God. That's Romans 8:14. And so I want to encourage you all, take this and try soul care today. Try it today and see what God does in your life. We'll be right back next month. We're so excited. Dr. Peacock will be back with us. Dr. Carter will be back with us, and we'll continue on with providing tools and resources to help you grow and develop in your walk with God. I'm so thankful for all of you that tuned in. Pastor Everett, thank you so very much. Pastor Cooper, thank you so very much. We're so honored that you have been with us tonight. And Addie Sanders has said to us, October 9th, Peacock Soul Care is hosting an open house. And so you're welcome to tune in and be a part of that. All the details are on the website. Go check that out. And I believe that you'll be better because of it. So in the meantime, What does it profit a person to gain the whole world and lose their soul? Have a great night, everybody. God bless you.
Get your soul today. Loving your whole being in a spiritual way. Get your soul today. Loving your whole being in a spiritual way. Yeah, I love you. Want you to hear it. Bless you, body, mind, soul, and your spirit. And you